I've just had a great conversation with one of my coaching clients all about social media. It's particularly about building out my podcast promotion production and promotion pipeline, and how I get my virtual assistant to basically do 99% of the work for me. I just sit here, record, and they do the rest. And I've talked about that before, and I will actually touch on that a little bit later. But first, when we kick off on this episode, I'm going to be talking about how this conversation progressed, more into how I actually got started with posting on social media, how I had no systems, how I had no pipeline, I had no assistant, and the journey I went on from those very early days of getting out of my own way, of getting over the fear of looking stupid and the rest of it, to then creating something that is pretty much on autopilot. Except for me recording the audio, I don't have to do anything else to get my stuff out there these days. So let's jump in and talk about how this all started, and how you, if you're at the stage of just getting started with social media, can take your content production to the next level by slowly and steadily and sensibly introducing systems, automation, assistants, and all the rest of it.
So the question is this: how do entrepreneurs like us, who don't have an endless supply of cash, how do we leverage the best apps, virtual assistants, automation tools, and systems to scale our businesses, increase our profits, and have more time to do what we love to do each day? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answer. My name's Dr. Steve Day, and this is Systemize Your Success.
Later on today, I had a meeting with one of my staff, and they were in the process of updating some of the podcasts onto our new community platform. We're basically moving all of our podcasts on there, so they're all searchable by transcript, so our clients can then find, snippets of information really easily by just doing a search. So this is a laborious process. We've got 190-ish podcasts to go on there. And they were commenting on the fact there was no thumbnails at all for the first couple of months worth. And then they were really basic thumbnails. And then, they progressed and they got better as we went through. And the ones we do now are way better than the ones we used to do. And did they want me to go and update them all? And my reply was, no, I don't. Because it shows the evolution of where we came from and where we are now. And actually, that's a really helpful thing to be able to show people. And funnily enough, later that day, or later today, I should say, because it's just happened now, later in the same day, a client came on the coaching call. He'd been asking about social media in the community, and I had the opportunity to then show him where this all started. It started with just the audio. There was no video. There was no thumbnails. It was just my audio playing, and then we put it onto the podcast site, and it went off to iTunes and Spotify and all the rest of it. But there was nothing else to go behind it. And then after a couple of months, we started introducing YouTube, but without anything fancy, and then we developed it over the time. And I was able to take him back to the very beginning and show him how it all started for me. And that, I believe, helped for him to see that when you look at people who have been doing content creation for a long time, and I'm way behind so many of the people I aspire to be like, but I don't try to emulate them exactly. I don't think, my God, look at, Pat Flynn's videos or Neil Patel's and how edited and cool they are. And there's because I know that stuff takes time to do, and we haven't got the people power in the business to be able to dedicate all that time to be able to do it. Yeah, we've got AI and all the rest of it now, and it's helping stuff, but it still requires people, and there are priorities, and you have to make those choices. And if you're a solopreneur, those choices are even harder. So what I wanted to share really today was about where I started right back at the beginning with social media, way before my podcast. I think I'd been in business for 4 years before I launched my podcast, maybe even longer. And all of that time I had been posting primarily on Facebook. I didn't really touch LinkedIn at all until a couple of years ago. I had an Instagram account, unfortunately got shut down, but again, I didn't use it at all for the first couple of years, and YouTube was a relatively late thing for me. Again, really just after I started my podcast did I start putting stuff onto YouTube, because finally I had something to put on there. And so for me, social media meant Facebook. And that actually helped a lot. By being a bit scared of going onto other channels, it allowed me to focus on one platform to get good at creating content which got engagement, in one place, to grow my audience in one place. And we quickly grew my Facebook group to over, it was 2,000 really rapidly, then 3,000. We're on about 3,500 now. It sort of tapered off after it got to about 3,000, and we're slowly growing since then. But in those early days, I just focused, as I said, just on Facebook, not on paid ads, not on anything else. It was literally me putting content out there. And a lot of that content was pretty rubbish. It was just me talking at the camera, really nervous, like stomach full of butterflies, like tripping over my words, like deleting it, recording again, deleting it, recording again, like just trying to get something that was coherent out there. And I must have done that, dozens and dozens of times before it started becoming or feeling natural. And I used to write posts, and it used to take me hours, or emails. I used to write hours and hours long emails, like just putting out there, and then I could convert it into a post. That would take me a couple of hours longer. And all of this took me huge amounts of time to do, which meant it was really inconsistent. Like sporadically, like 1 week I'd do 3 posts, next week I'd do none, then I'd do like 4, and then 0 for a month. Like it was really, really hit and miss. And what allowed me to really get more consistent, to become better at putting posts out there that got engagement, that didn't take me hours and hours to create, was actually just by doing it. And I know that's probably not what some of you want to hear, that there's going to be this silver bullet or this magic wand that you can like throw a wave or whatever, and suddenly social media becomes super easy to do. But having the confidence to just get your voice out there, it is, it gets better with time. The other thing though is that you find your voice, you find your medium, and then you can lean into that. And by that I mean that I said I started out in Facebook, and that is literally all I did for ages. I didn't really have any other options. And then I got this opportunity or this idea to launch a podcast. I'd never done a podcast before. I didn't really listen to podcasts. Like literally, when I recorded my first episode of my podcast, I'd probably listened to half a dozen podcasts in my entire life. It just wasn't something that I consumed, and still listen to this day, with the exception of Conan O'Brien, Who Needs a Friend. That is the only podcast I've listened to consistently ever. I've listened to probably a dozen other podcasts, business podcasts, over the years. However, it's the medium that I enjoy doing the most. I enjoy recording my videos. I enjoy seeing it going out onto the podcast sites and seeing people downloading it. I enjoy the fact that I get people coming to me in the street, on the street, sorry, people I know, not random people, I'm not that famous. Hey, Steve. No, but people I know, I had a call last week and somebody had literally just found me by listening to my podcast for months or years. I didn't ask them how long actually, but they listened to loads of my podcasts, they said, and they came on to the call with me to talk about joining one of my coaching programs. And that was the only way they got to know me. It wasn't through referral, which many of our clients come through. It wasn't through social media, unless you call podcast social media. It was literally they'd listened to the podcast and found me. And I loved that. And okay, you can get that from Facebook, and I do, and we can get it from YouTube, whatever. But I really like the idea of the podcast. I'm an audio listener, audio learner. I learn everything through audiobooks. That's why I like the medium. And that's what the advice I got, I think it was off Russell Brunson, is like use the medium you consume the most, and then lean into doing that, because that's the thing you'll know best. Podcast actually wasn't the thing, but I don't do any social media at all, ever. Like my staff do all of that, because I get so distracted with my ADHD brain that it literally can waste hours of my day, that I have all my social media dealt with somebody else. So I don't do social media, I don't do podcasts, but what I do is audiobooks. So I felt that podcast was the nearest thing to that in order for me to understand the medium. And yes, I have actually listened to probably a few podcasts as well when I was doing some research about the style and stuff of how we're going to do this. Anyway, I digress. So the point of this episode now is to say, or the point why I'm going into this is to say, look, when you get started, it's so easy for me to say, just go and do it, but literally just go and do it. And what I mean by that is, go into ChatGPT right now if you can't think of anything to talk about. And if you're in, like my client earlier, he is in property development. He finds development sites, and then he finds investors to invest in those development sites. That's the business that he's launching now. And so I said to him, okay, let's create some posts for social media. And we did this live on the coaching session. So I went into ChatGPT and I said, act as the marketing content manager for a property development company based in the UK, and create 10 interesting topics that investors would like to read in order to build authority for me as the property developer. And so ChatGPT kicked out a few ideas, and one of them I particularly like was, what should I look for in an investor before I invest in them, or something like that. Why? Let me find it. Legal considerations of property investors in the UK was one. Importance of infrastructure in property UK investments. How to assess the risk of property developments. What should I ask about a property developer before investing in them? These are all the ideas that ChatGPT just kicked out, 20 topics off just like in 2 seconds. And then I said, right, for the one which was how to assess the risk in property development investments, create me a 500-word blog post. And then it goes through and it creates a nice bulleted blog post. So then he has now got like fuel to either just literally take that, make it his own and post it as a blog post. Bang, you've got a bit of content done. And if you're a writer, blog post may be the way for you to go. But if it's not, if it's going to be on something like a YouTube video or a podcast, you can read that a couple of times, get some ideas, create a few bullet points, and then just go. Because you don't have to think. You've got content that's being drafted for you. You can put your own spin on it, your own ideas as you're reading it out, and that way it becomes authentic. It's not, you aren't just like copying and pasting from ChatGPT or AI. You are actually making it your own by the fact you're just actually processing it and then regurgitating out your own thoughts on the subject, but guided heavily by a structure that's been, written really professionally. But then you don't have to worry about, what am I going to post about, or is this going to be interesting to people? Because you take away that part of, I think the fear of no one's going to listen to this, no one's going to read this, and then it'll make me feel bad. Whereas if you haven't come up with the idea in the first place, you can just go and blame ChatGPT. Now, I must say that I don't actually do this, because I do nearly all of my podcasts literally I like this one, from the conversations I have day to day. That's the style of my podcast. However, if your podcast is more informative, or if your blog is, or your YouTube channel, or your Facebook profile, your feeds, if it's more just informative about education, rather mine is more like a journey and an experience, and this is what I've sold and how I've done it, or maybe, and I interview people obviously as well. So you've got to get the right, whatever the theme of your podcast or your medium is, your channel is, then you want to keep it consistent. But if you are actually just information giving, then ChatGPT is fantastic to be able to actually produce huge amounts of great content without having to overthink it. So you can overcome that writer's block that used to exist pre-AI. And now you've got no excuse not to be able to actually create good content really quickly. And my favorite medium, as I said, is audio. Actually, video is my favorite video, because with the video, I get the audio. I also get the video I can whack onto YouTube. I can create screenshots from the video. I can create shorts. I can create, those little 5-minute long videos as well, whatever they're called. I'm not sure because my podcast person does them. But there's all the different ways you can basically chop up and repurpose the content from a video. It's the most rich in terms of, you can't really record anything more than a video unless you're going to go 3D or the rest of it. And so therefore, that's what I choose to do. And I don't mind being on camera, just, hear me chat away or whatever. I just stare at the camera. I don't look at myself on the screen, and then I don't worry about what I look like. So that has worked for me. It may not work for you. If you find audio easier, great. If you find writing easier, great. You can also use AI to read your transcripts that you write in blogs and get them to read them out on your podcast, on your YouTube channel. I actually gave an example of this quite a while ago when I recorded my own voice, or emulated my own voice using Descript, and then had that read the entire episode for me on my podcast just to see if it worked. And it's actually getting better all the time. It was a little bit robotic then, but I've heard some recent ones that have been really good, although it's not something that I have dabbled with much. I am, though, thinking of doing it just as a side for the new content I'm putting out for my course. A good friend of mine, Jim James, who I've interviewed on the podcast before, he has just created a course about being a great guest on a podcast, and that entire course, apart from some introductions by Jim, is actually delivered with a video AI who looks totally human, sounding really human, with great facial expressions, great intonation. And so nowadays you can actually use AI to do the hard part for you if you find that hard. For me, actually, I would find that 10 times harder because I'm rubbish at writing. So it would take me hours and hours to write a transcript, whereas I'm much better just having a few bullet points and, shooting from the hip, so to speak. So how does this evolve, moving from where I started, just getting stuff out there, just accepting that bad is okay, over time getting better and more confident, getting my voice, finding my channel, starting doing it regularly. And then when I launched my podcast, things changed because suddenly I had a commitment to do it regularly. Whereas before it was just my Facebook profile. If I didn't post this week, so what? I'm on holiday. I can't be bothered. Now I've got a podcast, and every single week my podcast launches on a Thursday. So if I haven't got a podcast episode recorded at least a week before, it ain't going to get published in time. So I've got to plan ahead. And in fact, we try and work about 6 weeks ahead, because that means that if I do go on holiday, like I did over the summer for 6 weeks, I don't have to record a huge amount of episode. I can just record a couple of extra, and then we can keep going until I get back. And then I'll basically catch up again and build up a new bank. So I like to work 6 weeks ahead now, but I didn't do for a long time. When I started out, I was literally working a week ahead, often recording the episode at the 11th hour to be able to send to the agency. They'd be hammering me saying, Steve, we need your audio. We can't get this done unless you get the audio by tonight. And I'll be sat there trying to think of what the hell am I going to talk about. So it takes the pressure off by planning ahead, but it wasn't like that for me to begin with. And also, one thing that is a huge difference between then and now is the promotion of each episode that we put out. Back in the day, it was literally, I did the podcast episode, I sat down, I write a post onto my Facebook profile and into my Facebook group and said, hey, I've just recorded a podcast, here's the link. And that was it. And now, moving on, I've got somebody that does that for me. And this was a simple evolutionary process. It wasn't that, and going back to the conversation I had earlier today with my client, they were asking me at what point should I be thinking about, hiring a social media manager or hiring a content creator or a graphic designer or whatever. For me, I just had a general assistant, virtual assistant. And as I started doing my podcast, the work that I was doing, my general work, lent towards the podcast. So I started spending more of my time doing podcast related admin and maybe creating thumbnails or creating posts, etc., etc. So that's the work I delegated. I didn't think, I need to go out and hire some professional to do this. I just had a conversation with them. I said, this is how I'm doing it today. Can you just take over? And they did. And then over the course of the next sort of 2 or 3 months, we then got a bit better cadence. We launched onto YouTube because that required, again, more work, and I didn't want to have to do that. But with somebody else helping me, they could go and figure out how to set up a YouTube channel, how to put the end cards on and do the SEO and put the show notes on there. And our YouTube channel is pretty, don't look at it for an example of a great set up YouTube channel. I get emailed all the time with people asking me to, if they want me to help actually make it better. But what I'm saying is it goes out consistently because I'm not doing it. And I never, ever did my own YouTubing. That's what my assistant did. And then after a while, we started doing it on Instagram and then onto TikTok, which we haven't done for a little bit for manpower or person power reasons. We're going to start again that very, very soon. And then sorry, my alarm's going off. And then into LinkedIn and Twitter as well. So all of these things now happen regularly with the help of AI tools that do a lot of the hard work for us. And also my assistant who might basically manage it all, creates the thumbnails, then posts it all out and schedules everything through a scheduling app and a bit manually onto my personal profiles. And so all in all, the evolution of my podcast production and promotion pipeline has been 3 years in the making, and it's still being evolved. There's still so much more we should and will do as we develop the processes, as we develop the systems in order to allow more to be done with less skill, and also to ensure that we are consistently doing the basics well And then over time, we can then add new parts of the puzzle as we have done to this date. So when the question was asked to me, is like, when should I start systemizing my content creation? Quite simply, you should start systemizing your content creation as soon as you start creating content, because there is so much that as a content creator, we don't need to do, that if you can start getting into the habit of involving other people in the production and the promotion of your content as early as possible, it allows you to have more time to A, create better content, and B, think about what else you should and could be doing. Because I can sit here knowing that I'm going to record this episode right now. When I hit stop, I'll just send a Slack message to Ron just to let her know I've just recorded a new episode, because I don't do this at a set time. I do it whenever I feel like it, after a meeting often. And so that's it. And then I can then go away and think of something else. Like, actually, maybe we should be looking at SEO on our YouTube channel more at the moment. Maybe we should be actually looking at creating some more blogs from the podcast and putting them onto our blog site, because that'll improve the traffic to our site. Maybe we should do X, Y, and Z. Or maybe I'll just sit down and think of another episode to record. Having the headspace to do that is only possible because I'm not stuck in creating, making things look beautiful, or copywriting the promotional posts, or actually doing the actual scheduling of the posts, or just like putting it onto the podcast channel, or putting it onto YouTube. Like, all of this stuff is hugely time consuming. So you need to be really realistic about what you can do as an individual if you are a solopreneur. And if you are a solopreneur, I would keep it super simple. One channel, one theme, like one way of recording, one way of doing it, and just do it consistently. And once you've done it a few times, try and get someone to help you as early as possible. Then you can start thinking about what's next and developing it going forward. And ideally, all the way along the process, you are documenting so that if that person leaves, you're not left back trying to do it all yourself. Because I'd hate for my podcast now, after being consistently delivering weekly podcasts for 190-ish podcasts, to suddenly have a big blip if my assistant decided to leave, who's been with me for 2.5 years or whatever, since the beginning really. And so because we're super systemized, I know actually if she did leave for a reason of my control, then I could actually get someone to jump in and take over pretty seamlessly. And yeah, it would take a bit of getting used to get up to speed, but actually it wouldn't be catastrophic. It would be a blip rather than a catastrophe, and that is the best you can hope for with having good systems that allow people to take over roles. In my opinion. So that's it for today. I just wanted to record this to really explain, if you're really just getting started with social media, or you're finding it to be cumbersome and time consuming, it's taking you away from doing the things you think you should be doing more in your business right now. And if you're early stage, then that could be product development, about building maybe your email list and doing other stuff, then it can always get pushed to I'll do that tomorrow. However, if you put things in place to be able to delegate out your social media production and promotion early, if you focus on keeping it super, super simple until you can hire somebody to actually help you to expand out what you do, and then get them to do all the hard work and research for you, that is the way that I think it means that over the next 6 to 12 months, you can really grow your social media profile, your audience, without actually it taking up very much of your time at all. That's what I did. That's what I encourage my clients to do when I spoke to them today. And I think, there's so many great books out there on how to do, all this fancy stuff on social media. But ultimately, actually, the biggest hurdle is getting out of your own way, overcoming your own fears of looking stupid or looking silly in front of your friends and family who's going to read your posts. These are the things that really held me back. Like launching my podcast, it took me about 2 years after I said I was going to do it until I actually did it. And then since I did it, I never looked back. And because I'm forced to do it every week, it's created so much more professionalism around my content creation. And it's forced me to think about the systems that support it, so to make sure that it doesn't fall flat if for any reason I'm not around for a few weeks or one of my key staff isn't. I hope you found that helpful. If you have, please do let me know by hitting a sending a comment into the whatever you're watching this or listening to this on right now, or send me an email at steve@systems-and-outsourcing.com, or alternatively, leave me some stars, leave us a review, and share this with your friends, families, and colleagues. And that's it for today. Thank you very much indeed. Been a pleasure as always, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon. Take care. Bye.